Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Welcome to Data Plumbers Unplugged, where we clear the flow of data, one insight at a time. From demystifying complex concepts to uncovering actionable strategies, we're here to empower you to navigate the world of data with ease and confidence. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting started, this is your guide to making sense of it all. Let's dive in.
It feels like everywhere you turn these days, it's all about data, right? Data this, data that. It really does drive almost everything now, doesn't it? Every decision, every new innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't open a magazine or scroll through, any website without bumping into some article about the power of data.
But with all that power comes a whole lot of challenges too, right? I think anyone who's ever tried to manage a complex data environment, whether it's spread across different cloud platforms, maybe some on-premises systems that just refuse to die, or most likely these days, some kind of messy hybrid of everything. They know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, I think anyone dealing with data at scale today is nodding along right now. It can feel incredibly overwhelming, right? Like you're constantly trying to wrangle this wild beast that just keeps growing and changing.
Exactly. And, the thing is, it's not just a matter of getting more storage or faster processing. It's about how do we actually make sense of it all? How do we make sure the data is actually reliable? And, how do we avoid becoming the next headline about a data breach or some major compliance mess up?
And that's where, the conversation around data governance comes in. But even there, it feels like the traditional ways we've been doing things, well, they just weren't designed for this kind of environment.
Right. It's like trying to use a paper map to navigate a city that's constantly changing, right? New roads popping up overnight, construction everywhere.
That's a great analogy because, think about it. We used to have data neatly tucked away in a few central databases. Now it's exploding from every direction. Your website, your apps, sensors, social media feeds, you name it. It's all valuable, potentially, but it's also a recipe for chaos if you're not careful.
So what's the answer then? Because it feels like a lot of organizations are stuck in this cycle of reacting to data problems instead of getting ahead of them.
Well, that's exactly the challenge, right? And it's why we wanted to have this deep dive today. It's about this really fascinating concept called observability. And I know some people might be thinking, wait, isn't that something to do with like software engineering and monitoring systems?
It is, but it's also a powerful way to rethink how we approach data governance. And the more we've been digging into this idea, the more excited we've gotten because it really feels like it has the potential to be a game changer.
I think it's safe to say we're both pretty enthusiastic about this.
Yeah, maybe a little too enthusiastic. But honestly, the idea of being able to shift from constantly putting out fires to actually predicting and preventing those data disasters, well, who wouldn't be excited about that?
I mean, think about the costs involved, right? I was reading that the average company is shelling out something like $15 million a year because of poor data governance.
$15 million. Wow.
Yeah, and that's taking into account all the things we've been talking about, right? Compliance penalties, which are only getting more and more severe, the inefficiencies that creep in when your data is a mess, and the opportunities you simply miss because you can't trust the information you're working with.
And then there's the whole trust factor, right? If your customers or your partners or, whoever else relies on your data, if they lose faith in its accuracy, well, that can be incredibly damaging.
And incredibly difficult to recover from, I think. In some industries, a single high-profile data breach, it's not just a financial hit. It can really tarnish your reputation for years to come.
So it's high stakes all around. And I think it's easy to see why this idea of observability is gaining so much traction. Instead of just kind of hoping for the best and then scrambling when things go wrong, it's about having this continuous real-time view into the health of your data.
It's about truly understanding how your data is flowing, being able to instantly spot any dips in quality, and even tracing where specific pieces of data came from and where they end up.
Yeah, like, if you're a detective investigating a crime, you'd want to retrace the suspect's steps, right? Figure out who they met, where they went. It's kind of like that, but for your data.
It's exactly like that. Data lineage, as it's called, is actually a core part of what makes observability so powerful.
Okay, but before we get too deep into the how, I think it's important to step back and remember why we even care about data governance in the first place, right? Like, what's the ultimate goal here?
Sure, and at its core, data governance is all about ensuring that your data is accurate, that it's secure, and that it's being used in a way that complies with all the relevant rules and regulations.
Okay, so that's kind of the baseline, right? The bare minimum. But you've been saying that in today's world, governance needs to be more ambitious than that.
Yeah, I think so. Because if you think about it, data isn't just some static asset that we need to keep locked away in a vault. It's this incredibly valuable resource that, if used correctly, can help us do amazing things. It fuels innovation, it helps us personalize customer experiences, it allows us to make smarter decisions.
So it's about trust then, isn't it? Like if we don't trust our data, we can't really do any of those things effectively.
Exactly. And that's where I think observability really shines. It goes beyond just checking boxes and saying, yep, we're compliant.
Yeah.
It's about building this deep-seated confidence in your data, which then empowers everyone in the organization to use it more effectively.
And to get back to the point we were making earlier, it allows you to move from just reacting to problems to actually anticipating and preventing them.
Right. It's that shift from being reactive to proactive that really changes the game.
Okay, but I think some people listening right now might be thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but what about the real world? What's actually broken with traditional data governance that's making this shift so necessary?
Well, I think we've touched on a few of the key issues already. First off, it tends to be incredibly reactive by design, right? You're doing periodic audits or checks, maybe running some reports, but by the time you uncover a problem, whether it's a data quality issue or something related to compliance, the damage might already be done.
It's like waiting for the check engine light to come on before you even think about taking your car in for service.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the whole complexity issue that we've talked about. Data is no longer living in one place. It's spread across multiple systems, maybe in different formats. You've got different teams accessing and using it in different ways. And trying to keep track of all that with traditional methods, let's just say it's not easy.
And it leads to all sorts of problems, right? Silos popping up, data quality going downhill without anyone realizing it.
Yep, and when it comes to compliance, which, as we said, is only getting more and more complicated, well, without that real-time visibility, it's incredibly difficult to make sure you're actually meeting all the requirements. And that can lead to some pretty hefty fines and penalties.
So in a nutshell, it sounds like traditional governance approaches just weren't designed for the volume, the variety, and the velocity of data that we're dealing with today.
That's a great way to put it. And the consequences of sticking with those outdated methods, well, they can be pretty severe, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen the headlines. Companies getting hit with massive fines for data breaches, customer data being misused.
And it goes beyond just the direct financial costs, too. Think about the impact on a company's reputation, the erosion of customer trust.
Yeah, and then there's the impact on innovation, which is maybe a little less obvious. If you can't trust your data, how can you confidently use it to develop new products or services or, make strategic decisions about the future of your business?
Right. You end up second guessing everything. You're free to experiment, and ultimately you fall behind.
So, okay, I think we've made a pretty strong case for why this is an important topic, but let's get into the specifics of observability. How does it actually work? What kind of technology are we talking about here?
So instead of those periodic checks and audits, imagine having this constant stream of information about your data. Observability tools are designed to give you that real-time view into how your data is flowing, how it's being transformed, and what its quality looks like at each stage.
So you're not just looking at a static snapshot, you're watching a movie, so to speak.
Exactly. And those insights allow you to catch potential issues early on before they snowball into major problems.
Yeah.
You mentioned that analogy of the check engine light earlier. Well, observability is like having a sophisticated dashboard in your car that not only alerts you to problems, but also helps you diagnose what's causing them and, even predict when something might be about to go wrong.
Okay, so it's about more than just alerts. It's about actually understanding what's going on under the hood.
Exactly. And I think another helpful analogy is to think of observability as a kind of fitness tracker for your data, right? Just like a fitness tracker monitors your heart rate, your sleep patterns, your activity levels. Data observability tools track the vital signs of your data.
I love that analogy. So what kind of things would a data fitness tracker be looking at?
Well, one crucial aspect, as we've already mentioned, is data lineage. It's about understanding the complete journey of your data. Where did it originate? What systems has it passed through? How has it been transformed along the way? And finally, where does it end up being used?
And knowing all that helps you do what exactly?
Well, first of all, it's critical for compliance, right? A lot of regulations these days require you to be able to track and document how personal data is being handled. But beyond that, it's incredibly useful for troubleshooting. If you discover an error or inconsistency in a report, you can use data lineage to trace it all the way back to its source and figure out where things went wrong.
That makes a lot of sense. So that's one vital sign. What else?
Another key area is real-time data quality monitoring. Observability tools can constantly analyze your data for things like inconsistencies, unexpected changes in patterns, or, just straight up errors. And the key here is that it's happening in real time, right? So you're not waiting for some batch process to run overnight or for someone to manually check a report. You're getting alerted as soon as something looks fishy.
So it's like having a spell checker that's constantly running in the background, flagging any potential errors as you type.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And then the third vital sign is all about understanding how your data is being used. This is sometimes called usage analysis. And it's about tracking who is accessing your data, what they're doing with it, and whether that aligns with your internal policies and security protocols.
So it's not just about the data itself, it's about how people are interacting with it.
Exactly. And to make all of this work, you need a few key pieces of technology in place.
Okay, so like what?
Well, one thing that's really helpful is having a good data catalog. This is basically like an inventory of all your data assets, right? It tells you what data you have, where it lives, what it means, and who's responsible for it. And that makes it much easier for observability tools to actually, do their job.
So it's like a map of your data landscape.
Exactly. And then, closely related to that is metadata management.
And remind me again, what exactly is metadata?
It's basically data about data. So, for example, if you have a column in a database called customer name, the metadata might tell you things like, what format the name is stored in, whether it's required or optional, or even how it relates to other data points in the system.
Okay, so it's kind of like the instruction manual for your data.
That's a good way to put it. And good metadata management is crucial because it provides the context that observability tools need to make sense of the data they're looking at.
And then, of course, you need the actual observability tools themselves, right?
Right. And there are a lot of different options out there these days, ranging from open source tools to, full-blown commercial platforms.
So it can get pretty complex.
It can, yeah. But I think the key takeaway here is that observability isn't just about deploying a single magic bullet tool. It's about building a connected ecosystem of tools and processes that work together to give you that continuous real-time view into your data.
Okay, so let's say someone listening to this right now is convinced. They're like, all right, I need to get on board with this observability thing. Where do they even begin?
Well, I think the first step is to really assess where you're at right now. Take a look at your existing data governance policies, the tools you're using, and the pain points you're experiencing. Where are you lacking visibility? What are the biggest risks you're facing?
So it's about understanding your starting point.
Exactly. And then once you have a clearer picture of your current state, you can start looking at different observability tools and figuring out which ones are the best fit for your needs and your existing technology stack.
And do you recommend just going all in right from the start, or is there a more gradual approach?
I definitely recommend starting small and focusing on high impact areas first. So maybe choose a critical data pipeline or a data set that's particularly sensitive from a compliance perspective, and just implement observability in that limited scope to start with.
Get some quick wins under your belt.
Exactly. And then as you gain experience and confidence, you can start expanding to other areas.
Okay, so that's the technical side of things. But you mentioned earlier that it's also about people and culture.
Absolutely. You can have the most sophisticated observability tools in the world, but if your people aren't on board, if they don't understand why it's important or how to use it effectively, well, you're not going to get very far.
So it's about training, about communication, about fostering that culture of data awareness and proactive management.
Yeah, exactly. And it's an ongoing process, right? You need to constantly be monitoring the insights you're getting from your observability tools and using them to refine your policies and processes. It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
So data governance with the help of observability becomes much more of a living, breathing process that's constantly evolving.
Exactly. And I think that's a really exciting thing because when you get it right, the benefits can be pretty transformative.
Okay, so let's talk about those benefits. What are we actually going to see change in the organization?
Well, I think one of the most immediate and tangible benefits is simply better decision making. When leaders have access to accurate, real-time data, and they trust that data, they can make more informed decisions with much more confidence.
Makes sense. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Exactly. And then on the compliance front, which, as we said, is a huge concern for a lot of organizations these days, well, observability can make a world of difference. Continuous monitoring gives you a much more complete and auditable record of how data is being handled. So if a regulator comes knocking, you're in a much stronger position to demonstrate that you're doing things the right way.
So it's not just about avoiding fines, it's about having that peace of mind.
Right. And then I think another key benefit is increased efficiency. When you're proactively identifying and addressing data issues, you're reducing downtime, you're minimizing those costly reactive firefighting efforts, and you're freeing up valuable time and resources to focus on more strategic initiatives.
So it's not just about saving money, it's about doing more with the resources you have.
Exactly. And I think all of those benefits ultimately contribute to something even bigger, which is trust.
Right, we keep coming back to that.
Because it really is fundamental. Observability allows organizations to demonstrate that they're taking data governance seriously, that they're handling data responsibly. And that builds trust with employees, with customers, with partners, with regulators.
It becomes a competitive advantage even.
It absolutely can. For example, we talked about financial institutions earlier. Well, imagine a bank that can use observability to clearly show its customers exactly how their sensitive financial data is being protected. Or an e-commerce platform that can reassure users that their personal information is being handled securely and ethically.
So it's not just about technology, it's about transparency and accountability.
It's about building a culture of trust around data. And that's incredibly powerful.
So to wrap things up here, for someone listening to this, who's maybe on the fence, what would you say is the most compelling reason to start exploring observability?
I think it really boils down to this. In today's world, data is everything. It's the foundation of your business. And if you're not doing everything you can to make sure your data is healthy, reliable, and trustworthy, you're putting your entire organization at risk. Observability gives you the tools and the insights you need to manage data proactively, to build that trust, and to ultimately unlock the full potential of your data.
So it's not just about keeping up with the latest technology trend. It's about making a strategic investment in the future of your business.
It is. And I truly believe that the organizations that embrace this shift, the ones that make observability a core part of their data strategy, well, they're going to be the ones that thrive in the years to come.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of data observability, I think the key takeaway here is that this isn't just about, adding another tool to your tech stack. It's about embracing a fundamentally different way of thinking about data governance. It's about moving from this reactive kind of finger-crossing approach to something that's much more proactive, much more insightful, and ultimately much more effective in today's incredibly complex and ever-changing data landscape.
And I think what's really exciting is that this isn't just about, mitigating risks and avoiding problems. It's about creating new opportunities. When you have that level of trust and confidence in your data, it opens up all sorts of possibilities. You can experiment more freely, you can innovate faster, you can make smarter decisions.
So it's about more than just governance. It's about empowering the entire organization to do more with data.
Exactly. And I think as we move forward, as data becomes even more central to everything we do, the ability to truly understand what's happening within our data in real time is only going to become more and more critical. It's no longer enough to just collect data. We need to be able to see it, to understand it, and to act on it in a way that's both intelligent and responsible. And that's what observability is all about.
And that, I think, is a great place to leave it. For everyone listening, the challenge is this. Start thinking about how the principles of observability, the ideas we've discussed today, could be applied within your own organization, with your own unique data challenges and goals. It's a journey, for sure, but it's a journey worth taking. And the insights you gain along the way, well, they might just surprise you.
I couldn't agree more. It's an exciting time to be working with data, and I think observability is going to play a key role in shaping the future of how we interact with, manage, and ultimately trust the data that drives everything we do.
Thanks for tuning in to Data Plumbers Unplugged. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow data enthusiasts. Got a question or a topic you'd love us to explore? Reach out, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep the data flowing, and we'll see you back here soon.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.